and welcome to How Did You Get That Job In series. Thank you all very much for joining us. We are due to start the question and answer in a moment. I'm just going to give it till 6 o'clock for us to begin, and we will make a start. But thank you all for joining and watching along. I can see a few people are now starting to tune into the live stream, which is brilliant. So thank you very much. Just while everyone joins us, I just wanted to say hello and welcome to our second How Did You Get That Job in live stream on our BPS Facebook page. So welcome along this evening, and welcome to those that are coming back after joining us after last month's event, where we were joined by Robin Coakley, who spent a time going through talking about her career journey as a psychological wellbeing practitioner. So this evening we are running the second of our live streams, and I'm really pleased this evening to be joined by Liam Myles. So hi Liam, and welcome to this How Did You Get That Job in event. I don't know if you just wanted to introduce yourself to the audience this evening.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. And yeah, so I'm Liam, and I've been working with the BPS for a number of years now. And through working with the Northeast of England branch, I met James, and we've been doing bits and pieces of work together in terms of supporting people getting into careers in psychology over the last couple of years.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that, Liam. And thank you for giving it your time this evening to come along and talk at this event. So to everyone that's tuning in this evening, just to give you an overview of how the live event will work, we've got a couple of questions we're going to start for you to actually get to know Liam and find out a bit about his career journey so far. And then if you are listening and you have got questions that you would like to ask, please do add them in the comments section. We will be monitoring them as the conversation flows, and I will do my best to put as many of your questions to Liam as we go along as possible this evening. We do look for this event to run for around about 40 to 45 minutes, so hopefully we'll get to as many questions as possible from the audience tonight. But as I say, apologies if we don't get around to everyone's questions. So we're ready to make a start. And Liam, I just wondered if, to start with, you could tell me a bit about what you're currently doing at the moment.
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently doing a master's by research in psychology. So from my understanding anyway, master's degrees tend to fall into one of two categories in psychology. You'll either have a taught master's, which is where you it follows a similar format to undergrad in the sense that you get taught material and then examined on it in some way or another, and then you might have a dissertation. A master's by research, on the other hand, which is what I'm doing, is 1 year long research project. So my research focuses, well, the sort of strap line to it is sort of the cognitive mechanisms associated with unusual beliefs and hallucinations is sort of the strap line, but it's looking at how learning about the world in which we live differs with respect to experiences of unusual beliefs and hallucinations. So yeah, I've been doing that since October, which has been great fun, and yeah, really enjoying it so far.
Fantastic. I was just going to ask, how's it going? It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah, it's really nice. I think it requires a lot of what do you say, like self-motivation in terms of keeping up with the work, because it's one big long research project where there's just one deadline at the end of the year. You can quite easily get away with not doing too much work, so you can need to keep on top of yourself of actually pushing yourself to keep doing the work and things and staying motivated. But yeah, no, it's great fun. It's really nice just to get fully stuck into an area of research. And yeah, I think that I imagine the experience is quite similar to that of a PhD in the sense of just throwing yourself into one area of research and running projects on it on a smaller scale. So yeah, no, it's going good. I'm enjoying it.
Excellent. And just thinking about, you said that obviously you explained really well the differences between a master's by research and a taught master's. Was there any particular reasons why you chose to do the master's by research?
Yeah, so truthfully, I don't know how good a reason this is, but probably within a worryingly short space of time after graduating from my undergrad, I'd forgotten most of what I'd learned over the previous 3 years, and thought that going back and doing a taught master's might be a similar experience in terms of forgetting what I'd been taught. And yeah, I thought it'd be really interesting to learn about more areas in psychology, but I felt that the master's by research perhaps had its had more. I had perhaps more to learn in terms of my limitations because, yeah, the master's by research is very heavy in research methods and it's very focused on trying to develop those kind of research skills on both practical level, but also a theoretical level as well. And those were areas that I felt that I would probably benefit from more in terms of learning about how to do those. So yeah, that was the main incentive for doing a master's by research rather than a taught master's. But of course, it just depends on what would you say what you're kind of looking for. So a lot of people, this might be kind of verging on what we might talk about later on tonight, but some people might find it beneficial to say build up the clinical skills through a master's, and doing a taught master's in clinical psychology might be helpful in that regard. But yeah, no, for me, I felt that it'd be really nice to build up those research skills, and hence the research master's.
Fantastic, brilliant. That's a really good. I think you're explaining it, kind of looking at kind of using it to develop your skills is really interesting, and I suppose that leads on to the question in terms of how you got into that. Can you tell us a bit about your career journey to date as well, please?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much detail you want me to go into, so do give
Fine.
me
As much
a
detail
head
as
tilt.
you want.
Do give me a head tilt if I'm going into too much. But yeah, no, so I did my undergraduate degree in psychology at the University of Durham between 2016 and 2019. And that was great fun. I absolutely loved it. And the course was amazing. And the staff were very inspiring. And it was very easy to get involved in the department and the research going on and stuff, which I just absolutely loved. So yeah, that was amazing. And whilst I was there, I got involved in various voluntary activities, largely with a sort of clinical orientation. And in doing those voluntary activities, I kind of came to the conclusion that I really enjoyed this area of, or maybe came to realization rather than conclusion, that I really enjoyed this area of work. But I also really enjoyed the research stuff as well. So I was quite unsure as to whether perhaps pursuing a career in research would be helpful or pursuing a clinical career would be helpful. So I graduated in 2019 and then started applying for assistant psychologist jobs because I thought it would be helpful to get a bit of experience in that field. And, if I went and did AP assistant psychologist jobs and found that I hated it, then that's probably a pretty clear indication that I shouldn't be going down the clinical route. And then, yeah, it took me a while to land an AP job, and I worked as a postie for a while, which was also excellent fun. And then I began working as an assistant psychologist in Southwest London in an adult community mental health team at the beginning of 2020. And I really enjoyed this, and I worked there for about 14 months. But after that, I decided to move to a different assistant psychologist role in Southeast London. And this was in a medium secure forensic psychiatric hospital. So it was an inpatient setting rather than the community setting that my previous role was in. And then unfortunately, I only got to work there for 7 months because I'd received the offer for the master's as well, and ended up, cutting that a bit short, which was a shame. I would have really liked to have stayed in that role longer and spent more time with that team. But yeah, I ended up in, I think it was October of what would have been 2021, starting the master's by research at the University of Cambridge, and that's where I'm at now. So yeah, it's kind of a brief overview of the kind of clinical side of my experience anyway.
Fantastic. Thanks, Liam, and thanks for sharing that with us. So we've looked back now in terms of looking forward. Where do you see your career progressing from where you are now in the future?
Well, Thankfully, I actually have a wee bit of certainty in terms of where my career is progressing, which is something I've not had the privilege of for quite a number of years now. But yeah, no, I was very fortunate just last week to have received an offer for the doctorate in clinical psychology course at the University of Oxford. So I still have a couple interviews coming up, so we'll see how all that pans out. But yeah, I think most likely it will be hopefully starting that course, which I think begins in September. And yeah, so in terms of sort of where it goes from there, it's that's a 3-year course, which will be really nice to just kind of have that certainty for 3 years, because even just as I sort of described a moment ago, the nature of doing assistant psychologist roles and things like that, you end up jumping around quite a lot, moving around and stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to just kind of being in one place for 3 years and getting stuck into that course. And yeah, so that's sort of where I see my career going short term. Longer term, it's difficult to say, and I've really enjoyed a lot of the voluntary areas that I've worked in and the areas that I've worked in on a more contractual basis. So I'm very much keeping an open mind about the field that I'd like to find myself in. But one thing that is quite important to me in terms of a career is trying to balance clinical stuff and research stuff as well. So trying to keep a hand in both, maybe working as a clinical psychologist in the NHS for 3 days a week, and then perhaps having a hand in uni stuff for 2, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I'm trying not to project too far forward, but in the near future, hopefully it's the doctorate in clinical psych course.
Fantastic. Well, I suppose first off, congratulations. That's
thank
really
you.
good news.
Thank you.
And well done. I know how competitive that course is, and how hard you've worked as well to get onto that. So
thank
massive
you.
congratulations with that. You said about kind of interestingly, kind of that getting that balance in the longer term, and that is really interesting, I think, for a lot of people that pursue a career in one of the psychological professions, of wanting to keep that balance between practice and research. And it's always a difficult balance sometimes to strike, kind of, working part-time and things like that. So it's really interesting to see that you want to kind of pursue that, and also kind of maintaining that, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I think it's actually quite unusual. I mean, it might be changing over time now, but from my experience of working with clinical psychologists, they get all their training in both the clinical side of stuff and research stuff as well. But I think quite often what will happen is that clinical psychologists will focus on the clinical stuff and practice in the NHS. So you don't actually see too many maintaining a very active role in research as well. So yeah, I don't know how easy that will be, and the difficulty might deter me in time, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, that's it. And like you say, it is kind of one of those things where it's a couple of years in the future, and I think it's about, it's what will the landscape look like at that point as well. And I know other people have managed to do it in other areas as well. So it's very achievable. So that is really good to hear. There are a few congratulations in the chat. So
that's very kind.
To everyone for that as well. I'm going to go on to our first question for this evening, which we've had in, if that's okay. And it's just asking what voluntary work you did whilst you were an undergraduate student.
So that's a really good question. And in terms of kind of reading beyond the question a bit, if the question is actually, is there a sort of right type of voluntary experience, then absolutely not. One thing that I went for, I don't know if it's the correct approach to do this, but one of the things I really tried to do with my voluntary experience was to try and get a real breadth and diversity in the kinds of scenarios that I was involved in, or the kind of client groups I was working with. So I think people are sort of moving away nowadays from sort of diagnostic frameworks, but the way that voluntary organizations appeared to me to be set up was very much focused on diagnoses. So you've got organizations like OCD Action, who are for people that have received a diagnosis of OCD, or there might be specific support groups for people with different diagnoses. So I made quite an effort to try and volunteer with different different sort of diagnostic categories, if you like, because that is the way that the system appears to be set up. And I find that really helpful, because you end up getting quite a diversity of experiences coming with that. So you get to understand a wee bit more about the various challenges people can face, and not just from a service user point of view. You can understand it from, say, a carer point of view as well. I volunteered with like a carer support group and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that was helpful. I think it was really helpful actually in terms of, well, when I had assistant psychologist interviews, speaking to different scenarios and speaking to different client groups or that sort of thing, I think it was helpful to have that broad experience. But the kind of trade-off of that is that you then don't get the same depth of experience. So I'd done quite a bit, but it was probably doing a lot of little bits rather than really throwing myself into multiple hours a week, getting stuck into one organization. And that's probably a trade-off that you have to navigate. But yeah, in terms of the actual organizations that I worked with, Mind is excellent. I really enjoyed volunteering with them. And I think one of the reasons that they're really good is that there's a massive gap between sort of the people for whom, say, GP referrals are an appropriate amount of support, and then secondary care, where you're referred to a mental health team. There's a massive range within of people that get missed within that. And quite often they might be referred to services like Mind and stuff. So you get to work with a really vast diversity of people, and that was great in terms of just garnering the experiences and that. So yeah, I think if I was giving advice on how to go about volunteering, I think diversity in terms of the people that you volunteer with is really helpful. But noting that I also know people who have just thrown themselves into one particular field who have got loads out of that. So
I think that's really good advice, that flexibility, because I think that just reflecting on the chat we had last month as part of this series, it was kind of someone that had gone into one area and just focused on going with the depth. So it's reassuring to hear about that breadth and that depth, that both of those are options. I'll also I think it's important to kind of touch on, and you've mentioned this, Liam, at a previous event with the Northwest branch that we did in the summer, and something that's really stuck with me is that everyone's journey into wherever they end up in psychology, be that clinical or one of the other chartered roles or another area within the psychological workforce, everyone's journey will look different in terms of the experience they gain. And I remember you saying, actually, I think you worked in a pub whilst you were either an undergraduate, and you talked about how you applied the psychological knowledge to that, and just that the transferability of those skills. Yes, it's not going to get you a clinical posting, but actually showing how you apply that knowledge is really useful.
Yeah, well, I think I do remember that, and sort of speaking about working behind a bar, and when people are getting frustrated with you for not pouring their pints fast enough and things. There are a lot of things that come into that in terms of psychological professions, in terms of, I mean, it might sound a bit obvious, but in terms of even risk management, or kind of thinking about formulating why the distress and how you should respond in a way that won't increase that. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of psychology to be seen just kind of in scenarios like that.
Yeah, definitely. Really useful. So yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for answering that question. We've got another couple come in now. So someone's asking about any advice that you would have around securing funding for research or postgraduate study, if you've got any at all.
Yeah, so I've been in a really fortunate position where my research at Cambridge is funded, which is amazing, because yeah, I certainly wouldn't have been able to pursue the master's without it. And I think that a lot of people are in this position in terms of not being able to afford a master's, and then also acknowledging that a master's does give you a leg up in certain areas. It is a reality of it. In terms of finding funding for master's degrees, it will vary by, well, yeah, for master's degrees at least, it will vary by universities. So the university that I'm at, it's quite simple in the sense you just kind of tick a box, and the uni will look at it for you and try and see if they can get you funding. If you're applying for a master's by research, which of course what I do, then there are certain things that you can do to try and boost your chances of getting funding. In terms of your actual application to the course, if it's a master's by research, you might have to actually submit a research proposal. And if you're doing that, making sure that it's really well thought through and trying to make sure that it contributes to the literature and the you've got a really sort of sturdy idea that's quite novel is useful. In terms of getting funding for taught courses, I don't really know much about that at all. My undergraduate degree wasn't funded. And yeah, I probably couldn't really speak to getting funding for taught masters, but there are separate, there are pages online, and there's lots of information out there about that sort of thing, but it is just quite difficult to do. And then for if anyone's sort of not aware on the call, the doctorate in clinical psychology courses are all funded by the NHS. So yeah, I've been very, very fortunate that hasn't been too much of a concern, but completely understand that yeah, I was in the same position that I would not have been able to do the masters if it wasn't for the funding.
Fantastic. So that's all really, really useful advice, I think, in terms of just taking those opportunities and asking for those when those opportunities kind of become available. I suppose to add to what you said as well, I think there's some advice on the BPS website around funding, but the website prospects.ac.uk has got, if you are looking at a taught course, and also a master's by research course or PhD, there is some good funding options and advice on there as well. So anyone looking for that, I would encourage you to have a think about that as well. So yes, thank you. Thanks very much for that, Liam.
No worries.
Our next question's around getting advice for gaining research experience. So I think you said that whilst you were doing your undergraduate degree, you gained a little bit of work experience. Is there any advice you would give to people for getting research work whilst they're studying at an undergraduate level?
Yeah, so research was definitely something. Research is something that I've been quite involved in over the years, and it is very hard to get support or sort of to get that experience at undergraduate level. So in terms of the experience that you get as part of your courses, most courses, if not all, I'm not quite sure, but most courses will have a dissertation component, and that's really nice because it is just doing that is sort of like a small paper, or actually it's quite a big paper in some cases, but yeah, it's working through a research project top to tail, which is a really nice piece of experience. But I personally think that one of the most useful things that I did in my undergraduate degree was getting involved in lab groups and research groups. And I don't have a particularly clever way of sort of suggesting going about doing this. I just, in my first year, emailed the head of the department, which I only later realized how ridiculous that was, just to email sort of the top person to, but yeah, they were very kind in sorting me out with getting involved in a particular research group. And when you get involved in research groups, I think this is an amazing experience because you then get exposed to a load of PhD students who are all experts and have been studying one very niche area of psychology for 3 years. You then get to listen to them talk about that particular area, and you then begin to think like them about that particular area, which is extremely useful. In terms of the area that you do, you can, it probably depends where you're at in your career. You know, if you've done an undergraduate degree, you've kind of come out the other side and you're wanting to get involved in the lab group, you might have a better understanding of the kind of areas you're interested in. But if you are right at the beginning of your degree, as I was when I started getting involved in these lab groups, I would say just go with whatever's on offer. I start, like, as you know, I'm very much mental health focused, but the research that I was involved in from the get-go was associative learning and spatial navigation, which has nothing to do with mental health, but it's been extremely useful. And yeah, I still continue to keep up ties with those people that I worked with from sort of my first year, and we've published numerous papers together. So I think that getting involved in different research projects is helpful. You can get summer placements and things. So I don't live near Durham, or my family don't live that near Durham, but we do live quite near Leeds now. So I was then volunteering with Leeds University over the summers and things and doing bits of research. So that was helpful as well. And you can just get in touch with people because they always need extra pairs of hands to do like data analysis stuff. And it might be quite mundane tasks initially, but after a while you can increasingly, you can go to these lab groups and you can suggest things, and you do get increasingly incorporated into it to the point where you'll be writing up papers with people. In terms of research more generally, so that's really helpful, I think, to start people off, and that is something that I'd strongly recommend. If you want to really push forward with research, you can do it in quite an incremental way. I should say not research, but publishing. Kind of leading on from the question, I don't know if I'm straying too far, so please do stop me, James.
No, carry on. It's really useful advice. So.
Well, yeah, all right, okay, good. That's handy. If you're wanting to push on to publishing, this is something that very few people, I think, do, and perhaps because it's put up on a bit of a pedestal, it's seen as something that maybe you need to do with a lab group and that sort of thing, but that's not the case. So one of the things that you can do is start off. I would say start off really incrementally. You probably won't, but you never know, you might be able to. I definitely couldn't go straight from nothing to trying to publish in academic journals on your own. That's quite unlikely. But what you can do is start off by just publishing, say, articles in bulletins or something like that. So I mentioned that I worked with the North East of England branch previously. So I was encouraged by the chair of the branch at that time to submit an article to that bulletin, and I wrote up it was like a review of an event or something that happened, and I started really small with that. And then you can go on to publishing in bigger magazines and things like that. So I published in the Psychologist magazine and the Clinical Psychology Forum, and then you can go up from that to trying to publish in academic journals and things like that. And you can go up incrementally, and that's something that it is a skill that you have to develop in terms of navigating review processes, navigating when to sort of give in, if you like, to reviewers and that sort of thing. But I would say doing it quite incrementally is fine if you're wanting to do that kind of stuff on your own, which I was wanting to try and push out a wee bit of my own. But alternatively, working with research groups is also great, because you kind of share the workload then, and it's not all in one person, and you can be really kind of up to date in your field. So those are like the broad things that I've done in terms of really trying to get involved in numerous different research groups. And I still keep a hand with the different groups that I've worked with to date. And, you end up meeting people and things like that. And also academics move around a lot. So I began working with someone in Durham, who then moved to Leicester, who then moved to Aston. And that then allows me to meet people at Leicester and Aston and so on. So so there's that. And then also, publishing stuff as well. If that's something you're interested in, you can build it up quite incrementally. And it's good fun. I really enjoy it.
Brilliant. And that is really useful advice, I think, too. That's really helpful, because I think sometimes people tend to see, published researchers, and it seems like, especially as an undergraduate, quite far away. It's like, how do I get to that stage? So breaking it down, having that understanding of these are the small incremental steps you can do, like you've just described about, that initial just writing an article for local branch, local magazine, and then the psychologist, and working your way up that way really helps demystify that process.
Absolutely.
One theme that's kind of been throughout, I think, a few of your answers that you've given this evening is around networking, and how the importance of that, and how you've established your network. Have you got any advice on networking for people in terms of that are looking to go out there and start to establish their network?
That's a very hard question. I think my strong networks have probably grown out of my love for the pub, I would say. I've done a lot of I think psychology is generally, it depends where you're at, I guess, but academia probably is quite a sociable area. People might have lab meetings and then go to the pub after. I know we used to do that a lot at Durham, and people are quite sociable. And I guess you just get chatting to people. And my advice with networking is try. Oh, that is a very hard question. So I think one thing that maybe stops a few people is being a bit intimidated, or a bit fearful, or a bit shy, and feeling perhaps a wee bit like academically or intellectually inferior or whatever. If you're talking to a professor at a university, you can feel like, well, I know nothing, so he's not going to get anything out of this conversation. So what's the point? But I would say going up and just speaking to people and being inquisitive about the research is really important, and certainly not trying to feel that you have to kind of prove yourself or anything. Something that you see amongst something that I've noticed anyway, and perhaps this is just maybe me being a bit cynical, but I've noticed that with younger researchers, there's often a tendency to, if they go along to a talk or something, to try and find the critical problem in whatever they're looking at, or to try and find the flaw, and definitely do that. You know, have an awareness of the problems with what you're looking at and think critically. But I would say just showing like a real enthusiasm and interest in whatever it is, and always asking questions about things, I think is really helpful for networking. And yeah, just trying to be reflective. And sometimes I think through asking questions to people and saying, well, you know, oh, you did this. Well, why was it you didn't do this? You might have just highlighted to them something they hadn't thought of, or something they were a bit blindsided on. And yeah, that's how collaborations can begin as well. And yeah, my network is kind of grown out of unexpected areas. I used to have a bit of a thing at university of always trying to say yes to things, like that Jim Carrey movie or whatever. But yeah, always trying to take opportunities when they come. And I think over time I've learned to, you don't need to say yes to everything. But yeah, I think just where was I going with that? I was definitely going somewhere. I think just kind of trying to maintain those relationships and speak to as many people as you can, and trying not to be intimidated, because I guess if you don't go up and talk to someone about the research, then you'll be in the same position as if you did go up and talk to them, but they weren't interested anyway. So you've not really got much to lose.
I think that's fantastic advice, and yeah, thank you for that. Pretty, as a reflection, on quite a difficult question, but definitely that last bit of advice is something that's helped me when I've been doing it as well. Is you haven't got anything to lose from that as well. I'm going to move on to look at a slightly different question now, and it's just you've mentioned a couple of times about your work within the BPS as well. How has that helped? Well, firstly, what is it you've done within the BPS, and how has that helped you career-wise?
Yeah, well, I've done quite a lot with the BPS over the last 2.5 years or so. So in late 2019, after I graduated from my undergrad, I joined the BPS as a member, and I first got involved in the Northeast of England branch and became a committee member of that. And I was really fortunate to work with Paul John Griffiths, who was really kind, really took me under his wing, and yeah, supported me with lots of different opportunities, which was an amazing resource. And yeah, I can't thank him enough for that. But in terms of helping me with my career, it was actually Paul that pushed me to write that first article, for example, to publish in the bulletin. So it definitely, that set me off on a track in terms of research, which has been quite very influential over my career development. But there have been other things that I've been involved in as well within the BPS. So I'm involved in an assistant, it's not got the catchiest name, which is quite typical of BPS or like groups and things, but it's called the Assistant Psychologist Guidance, Task and Finish Group, or something like that, which essentially is developing guidelines and policies around the hiring of assistant psychologists. And I think that that's been quite insightful, because that's developed my career. It's pushed me to start thinking more maybe holistically about the systems within which people work within the NHS, which is quite an important ability actually for people going into clinical psychology or working in assistant psychologist positions, because the NHS is very much a team-based organization. No one works on their own there. So actually understanding the policies that influence how teams work has been really interesting, at least interesting. There was something else that I have been involved in the BPS, and I now can't remember what it is. Oh, I'm part of the pre-qual group, which I've also just remembered that I've been told to plug slightly tonight. So if anyone is an aspiring clinical psychologist, and has not graduated from their doctorate in clinical psychology yet, the British Psychological Society have a division of clinical psychology within which there's a pre-qualification group, which I strongly encourage you to join because they've been really helpful. But yeah, I've been involved in with them as well, and again, it's much more clinically oriented, but understanding the demands and pressures on clinical psychology as a profession, the nature of research as well, and importantly, something that's probably come to light with working with publishing in the Clinical Psychology Forum, which is the like publication outlet of the Division of Clinical Psychology documents. It sort of taught me a lot about the importance of communicating research better. I don't think that's something that we do particularly well at the moment across fields. That's not just psychology. So yeah, I've learned a lot in terms of that, and I think it's changed my perspective a lot. So yeah, the BPS has been fundamental in terms of my development and my career and shaping the directions I've gone down.
And it's really nice to see all the different things you've been involved in. And I will probably, to reiterate your point about the pre-qual group for clinical psychology, if anyone listening is interested in clinical, there is some really great resources and guidance from that group that they put together. And it's just, I think it goes back as well in terms of your engagement with the BPS is all about helping you establish that network and grow that network around your career in psychology. So yeah, thank you for that insight as well.
Oh, no worries. And you're right. Psychology is a very networked profession. It is one of these things that as you get further in it, everyone knows everyone. So it is just a really useful profession to work in. And yeah, I think as well with respect to clinical psychology, it's such a tough kind of road to go down, and no one does that alone. No one just manages to get those AP jobs, to get onto the courses without having some sort of support from someone else that is further down the road than them. So networking is really important from that perspective as well. So yeah, I can't advocate it enough. And one of the wonderful things about the field as well is that people are so lovely and keen to help. So, that support is very much welcomed. You just have to know, that support, the request for support is very much welcome, but you have to just know where to try and get it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's very reassuring to hear as well. We've had a couple of questions actually around postgraduate or around kind of research and further study. And I don't know if you can speak to any of this. If not, I'm happy to kind of pick up some points as well. But a few people asking about flexible options in terms of, if people are maybe coming into the field from kind of career changing, is there flexibility in terms of research courses that you've come across, and in terms of job roles and balancing that research and experience with also maybe the need to kind of maintain a full-time job on the side or a part-time job on the side?
It's a good question. I don't know if I can speak to it massively. So in terms of research roles, and so by balancing the career, do you mean in terms of study? So masters, PhDs?
Yes, yeah. So kind of having that flexibility of opportunity in terms of your studies and work and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm very aware that most, or perhaps not most, but I think a lot of clinical I'm on about research masters or PhDs, I think you can do part-time. And yeah, I'm fairly sure actually my supervisor did her PhD here at Cambridge. I think she also did hers part-time because she was working as well. So yeah, very much a thing that you can do and try and balance with work in that respect. But they are, I guess, quite challenging courses a lot of the time. Doing a PhD isn't easy, so balancing that with family life, I'm sure, be hard, but it's certainly something that's doable. In terms of more clinical clinical psychology oriented stuff, although I know that wasn't quite what the question was going for, so the clinical psychology courses are not only funded by the NHS, so the PhD is covered, but you also get a salary with it. So there isn't usually a need to work alongside it because it kind of is a paid job. But there are some universities, not loads, but there are some such as Lancaster that do part-time versions of those courses. But yeah, I probably can't speak to it much more. You might know more on that, I'm sure, James.
Yeah, no, that's I think you've spoken to it really well, actually, Liam. In terms of that, I think it's really important, I think, to do your research if you are looking for that flexibility, to move into research. You know, there are, whatever stage you're out of study, there are going to be kind of part-time. We're seeing a growth in kind of the distance learning options as well, that students can take part in, through various different institutions now across the UK, that offer very, very flexible study, and just actually probably having the conversation before you're applying. So going to the providers of courses and research courses, master's courses, and just actually talking about your situation and seeing if they can provide you with that flexibility, I think is really important.
Yeah, no, I do agree
as well. I think it's again going back to that, just saying and just asking for that opportunity, and exploring. But there is support out there, and we are seeing a lot of flexibility in terms of managing that. And within psychology as a discipline, speaking kind of very, very broadly, we do see a lot of mature students returning to psychology, both at undergraduate level and postgraduate level. So it is a very flexible discipline as well.
And just to add on to that, it's definitely moving away from the question a bit, but something that people I've seen concerns about before is people worrying that clinical psychology might be isolated to particular age groups of people, and wondering, if I've already had a career in something else and I'm maybe in my mid-40s, can I transition over to clinical psychology? And the answer is very much yes. There aren't any courses which select candidates based on age, at least that I'm aware of. And I know plenty of people who have done that. And I can think of one person that's on the Staffordshire course now, and she had a whole career in something else and then decided that couldn't be asked that anymore onto clinical psychology. So yeah.
And it can sometimes, within, again, speaking very broadly about psychology, it can, having that experience that people have gained in other fields can transfer across as well quite nicely into some of these areas as well. So yeah, really useful advice. Thanks for that, Liam. That's kind of bringing us, I think we've done all of the questions in the chat. So I just wanted, in summary, I think you've given lots of really good bits of advice, Liam, this evening. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for sharing your story with us this evening. If there was maybe one or two kind of key bits of advice that you thought of when we've been speaking that you would want our audience to kind of leave with this evening, what would they be to conclude?
It's very difficult for a piece of advice for sort of such a broad thing, but I guess speaking to maybe clinical psychology, which is probably what I can speak to best out of the things I've done, just because that's the kind of career path I've pursued. I think there are probably two things that I tend to say to people in terms of what is a good piece of advice for a skill to develop in that respect. So one of the things that if you are pursuing a career in clinical psychology, you'll increasingly hear people talk about is reflectiveness or reflective practice. And it's a bit of a weird kind of ethereal concept that can be quite difficult to sort of define, but essentially all reflectiveness is thinking critically about the situations you're in, thinking about, what went well in them, how you could have done better next time. And thinking in that way, I think is probably the most important skill or attribute, I don't know what you call it, that will help you get onto these sorts of clinical psychology courses. So I think that is something that it is a skill, and it's really hard to develop at first. But trying to develop that ability to think about the situations you're in, reflect on them, think how you can improve, is just something that's helpful across all walks of life, really. But it's particularly helpful within clinical psychology. The other thing that I've increasingly been saying to people when I've done these sorts of talks before, and it's not something I can claim ownership of. I have very much stolen this from one of the lecturers in the clinical psychology course at, I think, at Leeds Uni that I met once. And she said this fantastic thing where she was saying, it's actually really easy to see the psychology when you're working in, say, wards or mental health teams, because people might present to quite a different way to what you've seen before. So it's much more easy to see the psychology in that. But actually, the real acid test of a good psychologist, you could say, is trying to see the psychology in day-to-day situations and thinking about general interactions with people and what the psychological mechanisms or factors are that are at play there. And if you can begin to see the psychology in very mundane day-to-day situations, you'll be a much better psychologist in clinical settings as well. So those are the sorts of two pieces of advice that I've picked up over the years that I'm just regurgitating now. But yeah, those are really helpful things, I would say.
And I can second those. I think your first point, reflection at whatever level, it's difficult to do. Give yourself time to do it, but it can really have a massive benefit. So thank you for that, Liam, and thank you very much for your time this evening as well, and giving it up to talk to us. It's been really interesting to hear what you've done, what you've achieved, and also good luck with your next steps as well. It sounds really exciting, and I'll looking forward to kind of hearing how that goes for you as well.
Thank you.
All the best with that.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much for inviting me tonight.
Absolutely. So thank you to everyone for listening along this evening. As we've kind of been talking about research, if people are interested, we are hosting a psychology research day, which focuses on collaborative research in career paths and the resources to support your career. And that is taking place. It's a joint event with the BPS and Senate House Library on Thursday, the 28th of April. We've got several different speakers from both coming in from kind of industry. So an industry expert from the legal sector talking about applying psychological research to that sector. And then several other researchers coming in to talk about how their research has helped support things like government policy, and also using research to support social change and established identities and collaboration in that area, together with advice and tips on different career pathways and resources to support that. It is a joint event with Senate House Library and the BPS that we're really pleased to be running. We will pop the link in the chat if anyone's interested in signing up to that. Sorry, I can see it's in the chat already. It is a completely free event. You can sign up now as a BPS member. And just finally, we do try to run these How Did You Get That Job In on the first Tuesday of every month. Next month in May, it is a holiday day for the BPS. So our next event will be held on Tuesday, the 7th of June. So do keep a lookout on our Facebook page for details of that coming soon, when we will be welcoming another speaker to come and talk about their career to date. But all that's left for me to say is thank you to everyone who's attended, and thank you very much, Liam, for your time this evening, and for the advice that you shared. It's been really interesting to hear from you.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, everyone.